It was a crisp Monday morning in Washington, D.C. The White House press briefing room was unusually packed. Journalists from every major outlet had filled the rows, clutching notepads and recording devices like nervous students before a major exam. There was a palpable buzz in the air. Something big was coming, and everyone knew it. At exactly 11 a.m., the doors opened and in walked Karoline Leavitt, the young, fiery White House press secretary under President Donald J. Trump, now serving his historic second term in office. Dressed in a navy blue suit, with her signature confidence and poise, she approached the podium with a calm smile that concealed the storm she was about to unleash. Over the weekend, rumors had swirled across political circles and social media about an explosive set of documents the White House had obtained, documents that allegedly implicated Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, in a politically motivated smear campaign against President Trump's re-election campaign. Until today, it was all just speculation. "Good morning, everyone," Karoline began, adjusting the mic. "Before we begin with your questions, I have a statement from the president, and some facts that the American people deserve to hear." She paused, letting the tension build. Then she pulled out a thick folder and opened it deliberately. "What you're about to hear will raise serious questions, not just about political motivations in law enforcement, but about the integrity of our democratic institutions. For months, New York Attorney General Letitia James has been weaponizing her office under the guise of justice. Today, we will expose the truth." The room was still silent. All eyes locked on her. Karoline laid out the timeline. According to internal whistleblower emails, Letitia James had been working with a secret task force, codenamed Project Reset, allegedly created with one purpose: to take down Donald Trump before the next election cycle. One of the most shocking revelations? A series of encrypted emails between James's office and senior DNC strategists discussing coordinated legal action, timing for maximum political impact, and even public relations tactics. "Here's one of the documents," Karoline said, holding up a printed email. From a senior aide in the New York AG's office to a DNC strategist, dated 6 weeks before the 2024 campaign announcement. It reads, and I quote, "We need to hit him where it hurts: business, legacy, reputation. Letitia is on board." Gasps filled the room. Several reporters immediately began typing away, some live-tweeting every word. A CNN correspondent whispered something urgently into his microphone. On Fox News, the anchor cut into regular programming, saying, "We are witnessing something truly unprecedented." But Karoline wasn't done. "This isn't just political bias. This is weaponization of law enforcement. The American people deserve a justice system that is blind, not bought." Just then, a hand shot up from the crowd. Janice Raymond from MSNBC. "Karoline, are you saying that the Attorney General of New York coordinated with the Democratic National Committee to fabricate charges against the sitting president?" "I'm not saying it," Karoline replied firmly. "The evidence is." She placed copies of the documents on the press table. "Every journalist in this room will receive a copy of the unredacted communications. And let me be clear, this is just the beginning." Karoline looked straight into the camera. Letitia James used her office not to serve justice, but to serve an agenda. And now the truth is coming out. The press room exploded into a frenzy. Reporters yelled over each other, their voices echoing off the walls. News chirons screamed across television screens, breaking, WH Press Secretary exposes New York AG. Somewhere in New York, Letitia James was watching. Her eyes narrowed as she turned to her advisors. "Get me a response. Now." But deep down, she knew Karoline had just fired the first shot in a battle that could change the course of American politics. Letitia James sat in her Manhattan office, fists clenched. The live footage from the White House still echoed in her mind like a drumbeat. Her political armor, her decades-long career built on law, media savvy, and fierce anti-Trump rhetoric, had taken a direct hit. And worse, it came from Karoline Leavitt, someone she had underestimated. "Crisis team," she barked, looking to her senior aides. "Get me a statement. Get me MSNBC, CNN, The Times, hell, even The View if they'll have me. We need to flip the narrative." But damage control wasn't going to be easy. Within hours, Karoline's documents had been uploaded to the official White House site. Independent investigators and journalists were already sifting through the files, uncovering shocking emails, handwritten memos, and call transcripts from Letitia James's inner circle. The story was no longer just a press room bombshell, it was a digital wildfire spreading across the country. On conservative platforms, Karoline Leavitt was hailed as a hero. On liberal networks, she was branded a liar, a manipulator, a Trump loyalist spreading misinformation. The truth, however, sat somewhere in the 327 pages of raw data waiting to be dissected. That evening, Karoline appeared on Sean Hannity's show on Fox News. Calm, sharp, and relentlessly prepared, she doubled down. "We didn't come forward lightly, Sean. These are not baseless claims. These are provable, verifiable facts. And if the Department of Justice doesn't launch an independent investigation into Letitia James immediately, then we have a constitutional crisis on our hands." Hannity leaned forward. "Are you implying criminal activity?" Karoline nodded. "At the very least, abuse of power. At the most, conspiracy to interfere with a federal election. Let's not forget this is the same woman who said on camera that she would get Trump no matter what. That wasn't a metaphor. It was a mission statement." Meanwhile, Letitia James scheduled a hastily organized press conference of her own. Flanked by Democratic officials and civil rights advocates, she approached the podium with a tense smile. "These allegations," she began, "are an obvious attempt by the Trump administration to deflect from their own legal troubles and to intimidate my office. I will not be bullied. I have always acted within the law." But the questions came fast and fierce. "Attorney General, can you confirm whether any of your staff ever communicated with DNC operatives regarding pending investigations? Were you aware of Project Reset? Is there any truth to the email where you allegedly approved targeting Trump's family businesses before the 2024 campaign announcement?" Letitia tried to remain composed, but sweat beaded on her forehead. "I cannot comment on ongoing investigations or on documents whose authenticity we have not verified." "Wrong move." Karoline was watching live from the West Wing. "Boom," she whispered under her breath. She blinked. The White House team had already anticipated Letitia's talking points. By nightfall, Karoline dropped phase 2 of her campaign, a short video compilation titled, in her own words, Letitia James vs. the Truth. It showcased every public statement Letitia had made over the years about Trump, her fiery speeches during her campaign for AG, her tweets, her MSNBC appearances. Juxtaposed with leaked emails showing legal strategy meetings scheduled just days after those statements, it painted a devastating picture of bias and political ambition disguised as justice. The video went viral overnight, gaining 10 million views on X, formerly Twitter, 7 million on Rumble, and even traction on neutral platforms like YouTube and Substack. The next morning, a bipartisan group of senators called for a congressional inquiry into the allegations. And Karoline? She walked into the press room the next day with a smirk and a new folder in her hand. "Ready for part 2? She asked the stunned press corps. She wasn't just defending Trump anymore. She was leading the offensive. As dawn broke over Washington, D.C., the city buzzed with political tension not seen since the height of Watergate. Across America, news anchors, podcasters, and political analysts debated Karoline Leavitt's explosive revelations. The questions on every citizen's mind were chilling. How deep does this go? Was our justice system being used as a weapon? And who else knew? But Karoline wasn't done. Not by a long shot. At the day's press briefing, she walked up to the podium with an air of thunderous certainty. This time, she didn't have just a folder of emails. She had a voice. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said calmly, "today, the truth is going to speak for itself." She tapped her mic, then pressed play on a small recording device. Over the loudspeakers came the distorted but clear voice of a man. "Letitia told us directly, delay the charges until the summer. We needed maximum media attention, something that would crush his numbers. We weren't investigating crimes. We were running a political operation in a legal disguise." Gasps rippled through the press room. Karoline continued, "You just heard the voice of Daniel Kessler, a senior investigator in the New York Attorney General's office until 2 weeks ago. Mr. Kessler has signed a sworn affidavit and entered federal witness protection. He is prepared to testify before Congress and submit all communications, memos, and meeting transcripts." Suddenly, this wasn't a story about political rivalry, it was turning into a full-blown federal scandal. Kessler's testimony outlined a disturbing internal culture within the AG's office, attorneys who celebrated media coverage of Trump indictments, emails with subject lines like "Bury the Boss," and a chilling slide deck presentation titled, discrediting the Trump dynasty, timeline to 2024. We were told to target specific Trump Organization employees. Letitia personally instructed us to subpoena Trump family members even if the evidence was flimsy, Kessler claimed in his statement. Even left-leaning media couldn't ignore it now. The New York Times ran a front-page headline, "Witness Steps Forward, Inside the AG's Anti-Trump Crusade?" While MSNBC tried to frame it as a Republican disinformation campaign, internal fact-checkers began hesitating. Behind the scenes, President Trump's legal team was preparing for the next steps. They contacted the Department of Justice with formal complaints, while members of Congress, led by Senator Josh Hawley and Senator Kyrsten Sinema, called for an emergency oversight hearing. Karoline didn't rest. She did something bold. She invited Daniel Kessler to appear on 60 Minutes under a shadowed interview. That Sunday, America watched in collective disbelief as Kessler told interviewer Norah O'Donnell, "I was proud to work for justice. But what I saw over the last year was not justice. It was vengeance in a suit." By Monday morning, Letitia James's office was under siege, figuratively and legally. Subpoenas flew. Staffers began lawyering up. Leaks hinted that several deputy AGs were preparing to resign or cooperate. Yet Karoline wasn't gloating. In her next appearance on Newsmax, she stated calmly, "This is not about revenge. This is about restoring public trust in our justice system. Americans deserve a government that fights for them, not one that fights for political points." But behind the scenes, there was real danger. Karoline began receiving threats. Her car was tampered with. Her parents were approached by unknown men claiming to be journalists. It was clear. Someone wanted her silenced. But Karoline Leavitt wasn't just fighting for Trump anymore. She was fighting for the soul of American justice. Karoline Leavitt stood in front of a Senate Oversight Committee just 3 days after Daniel Kessler's explosive interview aired on 60 Minutes. The chamber was silent except for the low hum of cameras, the occasional cough, and the clicking of pens on notepads. Every eye was on her, supporters, skeptics, and sworn enemies alike. Ms. Leavitt, Senator Lindsey Graham said, "Can you confirm that the documents and recordings provided to this committee were sourced from a current or former employee of the New York Attorney General's office?" Karoline's voice was unwavering. "Yes, Senator. And the material has been verified for authenticity by 2 independent forensic teams." Behind her were boxes of printed documents. Thousands of pages, color-coded and tabbed emails, memos, call logs, transcripts. At the heart of them was something no one had expected. A signed letter from a top aide in Letitia James's office, addressed to a DNC operative explicitly discussing timelines for maximum political impact. The phrase, "Keep DOJ in the loop, coordinate before next press hit," was highlighted in red. That alone sent shockwaves across Capitol Hill. Within hours, Representative Jim Jordan opened a parallel House investigation. News broke that several former DOJ officials, some still active in the Biden-era administration, had received briefings from Letitia's team during Trump's indictment strategy meetings. This was no longer a scandal isolated to New York. This was national. Across America, citizens tuned into live coverage. TikTok teens, blue-collar workers, political junkies, suburban moms, everyone watched as Karoline transformed from a young press secretary into a historic figure, dismantling an entire network of politically motivated legal warfare. She was invited onto Joe Rogan's podcast, where she laid out the facts in a 3-hour discussion that amassed 80 million views in less than a week. "There's a deep sickness in our institutions," she said to Rogan. "This wasn't about right or left, it was about control. About silencing a political opponent using legal tools meant to protect justice, not corrupt it." Meanwhile, Letitia James's world was imploding. The New York State Ethics Commission launched an internal investigation. Anonymous staffers told the Wall Street Journal that they had warned Letitia months ago that her political activism was endangering their cases. But the biggest blow came from an unlikely source, the ACLU. In a public statement, the American Civil Liberties Union wrote, "If the documents are proven legitimate, this represents a dangerous abuse of prosecutorial power and a direct threat to constitutional protections for all Americans, regardless of political affiliation." Letitia James, once a rising star in Democratic circles, found herself abandoned by donors, allies, and even longtime friends. Her next press appearance was a shadow of her former self, visibly shaken, defensive, and increasingly isolated. Karoline, meanwhile, was prepared for the endgame. She released a White House transparency packet, a massive digital archive of everything her team had gathered, available for the public to download, search, and analyze. Within hours, independent data analysts found even more troubling connections, a complex web of campaign contributions, speaking fees, and private email chains linking Letitia's investigations to multiple left-wing PACs and super donors. One of the emails even referenced, chillingly, the ultimate takedown of Trump in 2024, one indictment at a time. America was furious. Protests erupted, some in support of Trump, others in defense of the rule of law. But the key shift was in the independent voter base, millions who began questioning whether the justice system was truly blind, or if it had been hijacked by politics. And in the middle of it all stood Karoline Leavitt. Unflinching. Unapologetic. Unstoppable. The U.S. Capitol was lit in brilliant white as night fell over Washington, D.C. Inside the chamber of the House Judiciary Committee, the final hearings were being broadcast live across every major network in America. Fox News, CNN, Newsmax, even C-SPAN broke their usual tone with the banner. Special Live, The Leavitt Files, Final Testimony. Karoline Leavitt sat calmly in front of the microphone. Behind her, mounted on screens, was the now infamous flowchart titled Operation Silence 45. Each name, each arrow, and each email subject line meticulously detailed the coordination between Letitia James's office, the Democratic National Committee, and a network of politically motivated prosecutors across the country. The facts were no longer murky. They were clear, irrefutable, and damning. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?" asked the chairwoman. Karoline nodded. "I do." The next 3 hours were legendary. Karoline walked the committee through a timeline of manipulation. She outlined how Letitia's team had buried exculpatory evidence in early 2023, how they delayed grand jury proceedings until favorable polling data aligned with their indictment announcements, and how key legal advisors received bonuses funded through PAC-connected channels. She then delivered the blow that no one expected. This committee should be aware that members of Letitia James's staff also communicated with officials at Meta and Google to pre-flag or suppress search results related to her misconduct. The room fell silent. The magnitude of the scandal was no longer just legal, it was constitutional. At that moment, Speaker of the House Mark Meadows released a joint statement from both Republican and a handful of Democratic representatives. "We are launching a full congressional investigation into the weaponization of law enforcement for political purposes. Letitia James is hereby subpoenaed to testify under oath before this Congress." The nation watched as Letitia James was served with papers on live television outside her Manhattan office. The footage was surreal, like a scene from a political drama turned real. The very next day, she resigned. Her statement was short and bitter, claiming she was the victim of a right-wing vendetta. But her allies had gone silent. Even legacy media outlets began admitting the truth. The Washington Post ran the now iconic headline, "Karoline Leavitt's Truth Bomb: How a Press Secretary Changed the Course of American Justice." Across the country, millions who had lost faith in institutions felt something stir. A sense that perhaps not everything was broken. That one brave voice, armed with facts, could turn the tide. Karoline didn't celebrate. She didn't go on a victory tour. Instead, she returned to the White House podium, standing once again under the iconic seal. Cameras rolled as she addressed the nation. President Trump, bolstered by public support, surged in national polls. And Karoline Leavitt became a household name. By the end of the year, a grassroots campaign emerged across all 50 states. Bumper stickers, t-shirts, and hashtags read, #BeLikeKaroline, because in a time of chaos, manipulation, and fear she had stood alone, unwavering. And she had won.